Max Holloway is one of the most respected voices in the UFC, and maybe in all of MMA. That's because he has a crazy chin, knockout power, and integrity. His sense of humor is always on point too.
You know who the real money fight is, DC? It's me.
While he often praises the fighters who beat him, when someone crosses the line, Max isn't one to let it slide. Over the years, a few opponents pushed too far, questioned his heart, mocked his UFC record, and even blocked his path when it mattered most. Some smiled while doing it. Here are the 5 fighters Max Holloway hates the most. Let's start with probably the most hated fighter on the list, Daniel Cormier. That was Max Holloway offering to fight Daniel Cormier with the same tone someone might use to order lunch. No grin or build-up, just another day, another imaginary booking. Max brings it up constantly. Cormier could be doing commentary on a completely unrelated fight, and somehow Max finds a way to mention the soda, the size, or the weight difference like he's still keeping score. It's not serious, but that hasn't stopped Holloway from turning it into a recurring bit, one where DC always plays the role of the out-of-shape big brother who needs to be humbled.
You know you could whoop DC. Oh!
When they filmed The Ultimate Fighter together, Max and DC actually got along great. Cormier took care of him, showed him around, helped him settle in. When he was doing The Ultimate Fighter, a nice guy, taking me around, this and that.
When he was doing The Ultimate Fighter,
the dynamic was more big brother than rival, and Max has always talked about it that way.
amount of soda this guy drank.
That's where things flipped. Max turned the thank you story into a roast, and it stuck. Ever since, the soda line has been a go-to. What started as a compliment turned into one of Max's longest-running jokes, and DC, like always, walked right into it. Max has always joked about fighting DC like it was a real plan. He says it with a straight face. You know, it's just a featherweight casually calling out a former heavyweight champion. Not a lot to it. The joke never gets old, mostly because Max refuses to drop it. He's claimed Cormier's soda habit is enough to close the gap. He's hinted at moving up in weight just to prove a point. None of it has ever been serious, but he commits to the bit like he's halfway into a training camp.
We're gonna get to heavyweight. I'm gonna fight this guy. That's the thing.
That kind of confidence isn't new for Max. Even when he's undersized, he leans into the challenge. In this case, the challenge just happens to be imaginary. Daniel Cormier never fires back, he just laughs it off. Every time Max brings up the soda or starts talking like a heavyweight, DC lets it slide. He plays along during interviews, shrugs it off in press rooms, and never looks annoyed. It's all part of the bit, and he knows it. The two have always had a good relationship. Cormier supported Max long before the joke started. As a commentator, he often praises Holloway's timing, his output, and his ability to read opponents. He once called him one of the best boxers in the UFC. That kind of credit doesn't come lightly. Cormier has always been vocal about his support for Hawaiian fighters. Holloway fits that mold, even if he spends most of his time roasting DC on camera. The back and forth works because both sides know exactly what it is.
I hate Max Holloway. Why'd you sit me next to Max?
Fans have made it a permanent part of the show. Every time Max gets a microphone, everyone knows DC is gonna get clowned. This one never turned serious. It's just a running joke between two guys who like each other and know how to keep the crowd entertained. The size difference, the soda stories, and the fake call-outs all became part of the bit. MMA fans don't always get that kind of chemistry between fighters, especially across weight classes, so they held on to it. We started with this one on purpose. It's light, it's fun, and nobody got hurt, but that's about to change. Coming in at number 4 is Jose Aldo. Max Holloway wasn't planning a rivalry with Jose Aldo, but after UFC 206, it was hard to avoid one. He had just stopped Anthony Pettis in the 3rd round, picked up the interim featherweight belt, and called for a unification bout. The UFC booked it for Rio 5 months later at UFC 212. Aldo didn't like the timing. He accused Holloway of ducking him earlier that year, claiming Max had made excuses, cited an injury, and asked for more time to avoid the fight. Holloway denied all of it. He said there was no offer and that he had been medically suspended after UFC 206. As far as UFC 208, he claimed he wasn't even aware it was an option. The accusations didn't sit well, and when the fight finally happened, it showed. Holloway controlled the tempo, wore Aldo down, and finished him in the third. Afterward, on the MMA Hour, Max told Ariel Helwani he felt that Aldo gave up mid-fight.
He did nothing. I was like, man, he just kind of want to fight, you know?
The belt was his, but the feud was far from over. Holloway responded by highlighting Aldo's own track record. He pointed out that Aldo had withdrawn from multiple scheduled title defenses, always offering a justification afterward. According to Holloway, the pattern was clear. Aldo frequently cited injuries, coaching issues, or scheduling conflicts. From Max's perspective, this made Aldo's accusations even less credible. He saw Aldo's criticisms as hypocritical, undermining the respect between fighters. At UFC 212, Holloway was ready to settle the issue in the cage. He applied constant pressure, controlled the fight's tempo, and ultimately secured a TKO victory in the third round. Mid-fight, Holloway openly taunted Aldo, raising his hands without a response. Reminiscing on the situation, Holloway described the moment clearly.
He opened the door, I just hold his hand, I walked him through him and say,
Even after the decisive finish, Aldo downplayed Holloway's performance, giving him minimal credit. His comments left the rivalry unresolved. In the rematch at UFC 218, Holloway was noticeably more aggressive in his pre-fight comments. The tension from their first meeting clearly carried over. Once the fight started, Max dictated the pace again, systematically breaking Aldo down. Heading into the third round, Holloway told his corner, "The fight starts now." True to his word, Holloway secured another third-round TKO victory. After the fight, Holloway publicly praised Aldo, calling him the greatest featherweight ever and saying that his home country should be proud of him.
I think Brazil should be building statues of that guy.
Despite these gestures, the tension behind their rivalry was genuine. It stemmed from Aldo's earlier claims about Holloway avoiding fights. Holloway respected Aldo's accomplishments, but resented the way Aldo had handled their situation in 2016 and 2017. And speaking of UFC GOATs from a decade ago, the third spot on the list is reserved for the notorious. It's been over a decade since Max Holloway fought Conor McGregor, but he still brings him up in interviews regularly. Sometimes it's playful, like when Holloway jokes with reporters to "tell your boy I'm in town," referencing McGregor's antics. Other times, it's clear he's genuinely irritated by the whole situation. Holloway doesn't dwell too much on losing that fight, but how everything unfolded afterwards still bothers him. At least, that's how it seems. They first met at UFC Boston in 2013 when Holloway was barely 21. He accepted the fight on short notice, without a full training camp, and entered the octagon nursing injuries. McGregor also suffered an ACL tear mid-fight.
Knee in the fight, he hurt his knee, and he screamed, he went, "Ah!"
However, McGregor kept on fighting, even after Max asked him if he was okay.
I was like, "Oh, you okay?" He's like, yeah, keep fighting, mate."
Holloway never made excuses, though he openly acknowledged it wasn't his best showing. He repeatedly said that McGregor got him at his worst, and that he'd love another shot under better conditions. But as McGregor rose to superstardom, that rematch never happened, leaving Holloway feeling like the notorious moved on without settling things properly. After the Boston fight, McGregor went on his legendary tear. He knocked out contenders, picked up titles, and became the biggest name in the history of the sport. Holloway, meanwhile, took the long road back. He rattled off 10 straight wins and grabbed the undisputed featherweight belt for himself. None of it got a nod from McGregor. There were no interviews where Conor praised Holloway's rise. Naturally, he showed no interest in a rematch. Holloway noticed. He's pointed out more than once that some fighters forget the names they step over on the way up, and he was tired of being one of them.
If the Conor fight don't happen, it's not on my side.
It's not that Holloway wanted to chase McGregor forever, but the topic kept coming back. Max made it clear he wasn't interested in dropping back to featherweight, especially not just to chase a fight with Conor. If McGregor ever wanted to prove there were levels to this, Holloway said he'd do it at lightweight or even welterweight, anytime. But as the years went by, it started to look like McGregor was never going to give him that chance. Holloway kept the door open, but the other side never answered. Well, until Conor posted a video of himself walking back and forth, starting down at a TV with Max Holloway on it, basically pretending to stare him down. He reacted with a mix of enthusiasm and sarcasm.
Conor's really going in, you know? I don't know.
The fans, on the other hand, got excited right away, keeping the talk of a rematch alive. For years, it felt like Holloway was nearing the rematch and closure he always wanted and deserved. Unfortunately, with all of the incidents Conor has been involved in recently, it doesn't seem like the rematch will ever happen. Although Max has cooled down over the years and would definitely like to fight McGregor again to earn a huge payday, it doesn't seem like he looks at McGregor as a serious fighter anymore. And who can blame him? After all of the street fights, courtroom drama, and social media shenanigans, it's hard to say if anyone looks at Conor like that anyway. Now, if you want to talk about rivalries that actually got settled, look no further than Alexander Volkanovski. For nearly half a decade, Max Holloway was the benchmark at featherweight. He outworked every contender, defended his belt, and looked comfortable against any style the division offered. Then came Alexander Volkanovski, a fighter who refused to play the role of just another challenger. Their first meeting at UFC 245 ended with Volkanovski taking the belt by unanimous decision. The result surprised a lot of people, but Holloway didn't go searching for excuses.
I think everything went exactly how it's supposed to go.
He congratulated Volkanovski and waited for the rematch, making it clear he believed he could adjust and get the title back. That loss changed everything for Holloway. Up to that point, nobody had shown a real blueprint for slowing him down or taking control over 5 rounds. Volkanovski did it with patience and a style that kept Max from setting his own pace. Holloway found himself facing an opponent he couldn't break or outlast, no matter how hard he tried. The rivalry stopped being about chasing a belt and became a test of whether Holloway could ever figure out what made Volkanovski so effective against him. The rematch at UFC 251 brought more tension to an already difficult matchup for Holloway. He started strong and managed to drop Volkanovski twice in the early rounds. Most media outlets and many fans thought Holloway had done enough to take the belt back, but the judges saw it differently. Volkanovski won by split decision. Holloway did not create drama after the fight or attack the judges. He kept his statements professional, saying later that he believed he had won. The debate over the scoring stuck around much longer than the headline.
Max is going to turn up, I'm going to turn up, and we're going to put on a show.
The third fight at UFC 276 ended any remaining debate in the cage. The tensions were high. The two fighters even confronted each other backstage night before the event. When the bell rang, Volkanovski put together his most complete performance against Holloway, controlled the tempo, and won every round. Holloway was healthy and had no issues with his training camp. There were no built-in excuses or distractions to point to after the loss. Holloway acknowledged Volkanovski's effort and accepted the outcome, but it was clear that this one stung more than the rest. The rivalry might have ended on paper, but for Holloway, it left a mark that went beyond the record books. Volk never missed a chance to remind everyone how clear he thought those 3 wins were. Anytime fans or analysts questioned a decision, he would push back, pointing to the scorecards and the highlights. He felt the constant doubt was disrespectful, not just to him, but to his own record as champion. When Volk spoke about Holloway, he made it clear he considered the trilogy settled. For Max, hearing the gap described as wide probably cut deeper than most people realized. Publicly, Holloway stayed measured. He rarely fired back or argued with Volkanovski's interviews. Even so, there was a sense that the conversation wore on him. Fans pushed for a 4th fight, media kept bringing up the close rounds, but Volkanovski would shut down any talk of unfinished business.
Chat with Dana while we're here, obviously.
Holloway stayed busy after the trilogy, taking on every top contender and collecting wins that would have put most fighters back in line for a title shot. Volk kept the division locked up, and it didn't matter how many times Holloway proved himself. The belt stayed out of reach. There was no dramatic finish or ugly split, just a lingering sense that one opponent set a ceiling on Holloway's run. And now, the fighter who managed to get under Holloway's skin like nobody else. A man who will not surprise anyone by appearing at the top of this list. Ilia Topuria. Even though he was a well-known name among MMA fans even before he made his UFC debut, Ilia Topuria's star really took off after he knocked out Volkanovski at UFC 298. and called out Conor McGregor in the post-fight interview. Of course, the UFC had other plans. They didn't want to feed the biggest golden goose in the history of their company to the new kid on the block. However, they had just the right adversary for him, Max Holloway. Unfortunately, Topuria didn't agree. He told the reporters he wanted new opponents, and guys like Max were simply too old for him.
As I said, I need new challengers.
For Holloway, on the other hand, the timing was perfect. 2 events later, he would knock out Gaethje at UFC 300 and pick up the BMF belt. The Gaethje win solidified him as the next top contender, and since Volk didn't want to fight him for 4th time, fight with Topuria was perfect. Max wasted no time, calling out Alea in post-fight interview and saying he would fight him anytime, anywhere. Watching Topuria put away the man who kept him from the title for years didn't feel good, but Max, always the gladiator, knew he had a chance against the new champion.
Contract come up, sign the dotted line, don't make no excuses.
Topuria spent every press conference and interview throwing shots at Holloway. He called Max overrated, said his best days were long gone, and told anyone who would listen that Holloway was lying about being ready for him.
You don't want to show up, and I need you to show up.
When Topuria sat down with Daniel Cormier, he doubled down, saying on camera that he would knock Max out and take whatever shine he had left.
So I always find a way to win, and you don't.
Max kept his replies measured. He shrugged off the digs, told reporters he would fight anyone, and made it clear he wasn't going to let Topuria rattle him. For every headline Ilya chased, Holloway set his own terms and waited for the cage. UFC 308 brought all that talk to a head. The fight took place in Abu Dhabi, and for 2 rounds, Holloway held his own, refusing to get drawn into a brawl. But Topuria's pressure and patience wore him down. In the 3rd, Topuria caught Holloway clean with a left hook and put him out for the first time in his career. The stoppage was clear. Analysts gave credit to Ilya's patience and the way he set up the finish, but nobody accused Holloway of folding. He never gave up, but Topuria left no doubt who was better that night.
Promised to be the first person to knock out Max Holloway.
After taking the featherweight belt, Topuria jumped up to lightweight and took that title too, beating Oliveira at UFC 317. Holloway didn't sit around. He defended his BMF title against Poirier at UFC 318 and made sure everyone heard it. Max started poking fun at Topuria's fake BMF belt, throwing out little jabs in interviews and on social media. He didn't sound bitter, just restless. The loss never sat right, and Max made it clear he wanted another shot. He called for a rematch at lightweight, promising the next chapter would look different. Topuria may have handed Holloway his first knockout, but Max isn't done. If there's a second fight, nobody expects it to be quiet. Max Holloway has never needed a script to respond when lines get crossed. He kept his focus on fighting and left most grudges in the gym, but some opponents forced their way into his memory with actions and words that stuck. The rivalries in this list did not come from hype or promotion. Each one began with real tension, whether from public disrespect, accusations, or personal shots Holloway could not ignore. He never chased conflict for attention, but he never forgot who crossed him. If you want more stories like this, hit subscribe and check back for the next breakdown.